Okay, so now that we have understood what the document snapshot object is, let's look at the other type of snapshot we can get, which is a query snapshot or a collection snapshot, if you want to see it like that. So we get our query snapshot object from a collection reference object, and it is very similar to the document snapshot object that we just looked at. The only difference is that there's a couple other properties that reflect the fact that we're looking at a collection. Now, let's actually log it out first. So I've returned our Firebase utils back to what we had before, where everything was working as we had it before. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a new collection reference equal to firestore.collection@users. So we know that users is our only existing collection. If we were to check, we know that users is the only collection that we have. Now, I'm also going to call the snapshot by calling collectionref.get the same way that we did with our document reference, right? So now if I save and actually log out the collection snapshot, we can see what properties we have. So if we scroll up here, we see our collection snapshot object. And on it, we see that there's these new properties. The main ones that we care about are docs, empty, and size. Now, what docs tells us is it gives us back an array of the documents inside of our collection, but they're query document snapshot objects. So they're document snapshot objects, the ones that we just explored earlier. The empty property is similar to the exists property, except it tells us whether or not our query is empty or not. So it returns a Boolean. And of course, empty is false because we know that we have 3 different documents inside of our collection. The last property we care about is size, which just tells us how many objects are inside of our documents, inside of this collection. And using this collection snapshot, we're able to, for example, get all of our collection items. And then what we can do is on the .docs method, we can map over it, get the data of each object using the snapshot.data method that we saw in our last lesson in order to get a JSON object of all of our objects. And what that would look like, for example, is if we did collection snapshot.docs.map, right? doc.data. Collection, like so. And now if we save and we look, what we will see is the array of each of our user objects. I know it's a little tricky because it's probably not the format that you're used to if you've ever fetched data before from a backend. But this is just the way that Firestore wants us to do it with these types of objects that we get back. Using our collection snapshot object, we can just call docs, which gives us the array of snapshots of the documents. We map over it, and then we just make sure to call .data on those document snapshot objects to get the actual JSON representation of the values of those documents. But that's really all there is to it. We'll, of course, use these objects in different ways in order to update our data or set our data or get our data, but I just wanted for us to go over what these objects are. And now, hopefully, this code that we wrote before in order for us to store our users in our backend makes more sense. The only thing to keep note of is that on these refs, there's also this onSnapshot method. In particular on our user ref, right, which we get back from our create user profile document. We see that what we do is that the main thing that this create user profile document returns is a user ref. And what we do with it is we check to see, using a similar listener as our onAuth state changed, we use this onSnapshot listener, so that whenever the snapshot changes, right? Meaning that whenever the document snapshot object updates, whether because we set a new value or we updated the value or we deleted the value, it will pass that snapshot into our listener, which we've attached to this onSnapshot. And our listener is just this function. And what we do is we call our setCurrentUser action creator method, so our Redux method, to set the actual current user object in our Redux reducer. And that's how we are able to store that user on our current user, like so. And that's all it is. So I'm just going over what we wrote before, right? Except a little bit more detail about the types of objects and the types of queries we can make against Firestore, because now we're going to use this in theory to move our shop items onto our Firestore database.